Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for today's webinar, Personalized Precision Care and the Convergence of Healthcare and Life Sciences. I'm Matt Pross, Marketing Director at Argano, and I will be your moderator today. As some folks are still filtering in, we'll get started soon. In the meantime, please fill out our first poll question. All right. Thank you for filling out our poll question. Keep an eye out for more of these throughout the webinar. Now let's quickly cover some general housekeeping items. If you have technical or content-related questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A window and we will address your questions when we are able. Closed captioning is available by selecting the CC button in the bottom right corner of your media player screen. You can expand, minimize, and move each of the window panes displayed on your screen if needed. And finally, this presentation is being recorded, and we will send all registrants a link to the recording post-webinar. Our speakers for today's webinar include Jennifer Stango, who is Vice President of Revenue Growth at Argano. She has more than 15 years of technology and business consulting experience. Prior to that, she held Director of IT and CFO positions. Jennifer now specializes in solving complex healthcare and life sciences issues, leveraging Argano's industry solutions. Aaron Weichel is Argano's Chief Technology Officer, who specializes in uniting disparate technology systems and data sources. Aaron has more than a decade of experience solving interoperability and integration issues across multiple industries and has participated in the development of major interoperability standards such as MTOZ and FHIR. Dale Robinek is a global visionary, evangelist, and business transformation leader who builds value for manufacturing, CPG, distribution, and logistics firms throughout organizational design, supply chain optimization, technology alignment, process improvement, integrated business planning, and cutting-edge sales and marketing solutions. Dale is customer-centric with a vigorous focus on upstream, downstream impacts, with a talent for selling business solutions in complex environments and product spaces. Matt Munns is a seasoned technology and consulting entrepreneur and executive with extensive knowledge in international business, contracting, law, and business process improvement. He has hands-on experience managing complex businesses and engagements within life sciences and government-regulated industries. And last, but certainly not least, Blair Bass is an accomplished operations executive with extensive experience in healthcare, manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain operations and complex business systems integrations. Blair spent 6+ years as VP Operations with UHC and served on the board of directors of a healthcare startup company, guiding them in best practices and cost reduction innovation in healthcare and medical operations. Blair has a proven track record of operational innovation along with domestic and international personnel and project management expertise. Now, without further delay, let's get started. Jen, please provide the audience with a brief introduction of Argano.
Thanks, Matt. Argano is a purpose-built company with over 25 years of deep experience and knowledge focused on transforming business operations. You'll find us around the world with a global team across 29 countries. Our clients include the Fortune 100 to Global 2000. We help our clients drive efficiencies and values across multiple industries and around the world. Argano has forged deep alliances across the entire technology ecosystem with one goal in mind: to deliver comprehensive, innovative, and scalable solutions to deliver true value for all of our clients. Argano is the world's first and leading designer of modern digital foundations. We help clients reimagine their business operations by integrating, automating, and optimizing the way data, technologies, and users interact. Our clients can leverage our comprehensive services designed to drive value across their entire business. We help them transform from start to finish with core services that span across strategy, consulting, cloud migration, and architecture, to implementation, integration, and program management. It's all rounded out with managed services, data analytics, change management, and training services. Argano is formed basically to transform our clients' digital foundations, the fundamentals to how businesses are run, by integrating, automating, and optimizing the way data, technologies, and users interact. So we'll hop into the core of the presentation, which is to talk about the healthcare and life sciences market. In the US, we spend about 17% of our GDP on healthcare. Healthcare is expected to reach 6.2 trillion, that's T, by 2028. Think about the impact downstream to the market, though. Think about the life-saving devices, the medications, the medical training, the facilities, and the technology we need to provide something like remote care. Those industries are also going to see tremendous growth over the next few years. Before we really take a look forward, we have to take a look back and how healthcare and life sciences are blurring the lines. We look at the history and the evolution of it. The pandemic, and that's the reason why we asked the first poll question, caused advances in things like genomics, digital health, and gave us access to unprecedented data. Think about how many people opted in to be safe. It was the first time we had insights into things like allergic reactions, stomach aches, headaches. Historically, pharmaceutical companies only got critical issues with drugs, meaning that someone may have died or had a major life event with it. What we're seeing now is that pharmaceutical companies, med device companies have access to unprecedented data. When we think about pharmaceuticals as an example, that data can ensure better prescription adherence. People are opting in to self-reporting. I like to think about that as a world of drug commercials with absolutely no fine print. Coming out of the pandemic, we also saw that medical issues were really high, and it was mostly due to deferred care. We couldn't get in to see our providers. We also were experiencing weight gain, and the United States is currently in a mental health crisis. With all of that, consumers of healthcare were really looking for new technologies and apps that were focused on preventative care and wellness. Think about things like Calm. I normally talk about my smartwatch and tracking my steps. But when we think about Calm, it was really created, and health insurance companies are providing it free of charge to people to help with the mental health crisis. Can they meditate? Is that going to help their state of mind? The other thing that happened is sometime in 2020, a lot of the large technology companies got together that house all the genomic data. And what they agreed to do is create a common data model. What does this really mean? It's giving scientists and it's giving life sciences companies the ability to develop personalized care plans. It also means that we're getting better clinical trials, which means we're going to have faster time to market for life-saving devices and drugs. And with that, we had a poll. We wanted to think about how you're thinking about your data and analytics for population health. When we think about the genomic data or people opting in, what we're really seeing is we can improve things like health equity. We can look at hospital-wide monitoring to track turnover rates. We can improve patient wellness and preventative care. And lastly, we can streamline revenue management cycles with this. I don't know if everybody's had a chance, Meta. I'm not sure if you can see it. Perfect. So we had people click on that. So we saw kind of the 50-50 where people are looking to track the length of stay, bed turnover rates, readmissions, and also look at patient wellness and preventative care. With that, it kind of leads into our next slide, which was the movement. When you came first probably into healthcare for the Affordable Care Act, we were very much focused on outcomes, how patients experience care. lowering the cost, and improving healthcare worker satisfaction. We're now up to the quintuple aim. And that is really, how do you focus on patient engagement and improving the experience of care? And with that is do I want to be able to talk to my provider via chat? Is that going to be a web page or an app? Do I need to be able to access my medical record on my phone? Can I sync my diabetes glucose app to my doctor's portal? Can I sync my steps, my caloric intake to my weight loss app for a healthcare incentive? All of that is elevating that patient engagement, improving their experience of care. Now we have companies and they have all of this data, and whether that is a provider, it's a life sciences company. What are they going to do with the data? And ultimately what that means is they have to turn the data into something that's going to increase better healthcare outcomes. And the question really comes down to is, how is that going to impact population health? Is all of that data going to be something that we can combine to preventively prevent a disease? So we could look at men in their 50s of a certain demographic that got a certain form of cancer. Can you take that information back to a population of 20 and prevent them from moving forward with that same health outcome? That is ultimately what's happening with the quintuple aim. It's ultimately what's happening with the universal access to data. Lastly, what we're seeing from life-saving treatments is that we now have genomics. Genomics is the view of you on a cellular level. It's really know what makes you tick on the inside. That's going to allow someone like a pharmaceutical company to create a designer drug that's specifically tailored for you. But lastly, it's going to enable a provider to assist consumers of healthcare with their healthcare decisions. And it can improve the quality of life by improving ultimately the health incomes. Genomics is one of those things that's still emerging, but it's definitely the wave of the future and the trends that we're seeing in healthcare. So when we look at healthcare as a whole, we're going to continue to see investments in interoperability for data. We're going to see connected medical devices, not just my smartwatch, but we'll see connected insulin pumps, ECG patches to monitor your heart. All of these are going to give better pictures of a patient. It's also going to give earlier warning triggers. Can we prevent those medical crises from happening, which would decrease people going into a hospital or seeking urgent care, which ultimately decreases the cost of healthcare. Other things that we're seeing, I know I've chatted a lot about these other things, but think about 3D printing. We're seeing more and more 3D printing occurring in hospitals, and it's not just implants or casts. What we're seeing is the ability to print cells now for burn victims. There is a great investment happening in there. We're going to continue to see telehealth growing, preventative care, which we've hit on, personalized healthcare. But when we think about healthcare, there's a lot of challenges to what we're talking about, which is how do we fix the accessibility issues? I can hear Sam talk. I think you've heard me talk a lot, but not everyone has that. So how do we create healthcare solutions for all? How are the life sciences companies, those supporting characters, going to step up to make sure that we address the accessibility issues? I think we're all taking for granted that we have a 5G network and we have fast internet speeds, but not everyone has that same luxury. So how are we going to get them access to the life-saving care that they need? This is where we're going to start seeing more and more advances, I think, in the supporting industries that bring healthcare to all, which brings us to life sciences. And like I said, they're starting to merge together. And the reason why is sometime in 2021, we saw about 60% of manufacturers went direct to consumer. What did that mean from a healthcare perspective? It was a patient feedback loop. It was the first time, like when we were talking about vSafe, that people could give that seamless end-to-end interaction, tell a pharmaceutical company or tell a medical device company the issues that they were having. Normally that went through a provider, but now they're in the point where they can interact with these life sciences companies and they can quickly change those drugs or those medical devices. Aaron's going to talk a lot about this, but AI and machine learning is definitely leaps and bounds. The FDA cleared something like 500 healthcare algorithms. They're facing their own growth with it. So how are they going to bring these diagnostic aids for faster classification, faster diagnosis? I'm not going to go through all of it, but data sharing. There's all this collaboration now happening between our providers and our patients. We now have data interoperability standards for clinical trials. Those were released as well. So how is all of this going to impact us? We think about IoT sensors. I've talked a lot about my smartwatch. I talked about something like Calm, but think about a smart hospital bed. When we think about our nurses during the COVID crisis, a lot of their time was spent adjusting beds by fractions of inches. Imagine that we had a smart hospital bed that actually did that for them based off the correct rotation, and they could have spent more time with the patient. It would have increased the quality of care and maybe gotten higher turnover of our beds. Hybrid health is definitely coming. Those is long-term care settings at home. We're going to continue to see major leaps and bounds in the decentralized clinical trial. Most people are moving more to that home-based, decentralized. Why do you have to go into a facility? That means more people are going to opt in. We're going to have more information to tailor that personalized healthcare for them. Lastly, the thought-provoking trends that I think are going to impact both healthcare and life sciences is the impact of dark factories. If you're not familiar with the dark factory, imagine a person watching on a monitor, the whole factory, it's completely automated. When I start thinking about what dark factories are going to look like from life sciences, it's going to reduce the errors. When we start making those drug substances and drug products and we take the human out of it, humans can make mistakes, is that it might reduce those errors, meaning that we're going to have better quality and reliability of our drug products and drug substances. And then secondarily, think about it from an employee standpoint. How many employees may be exposed to a toxic byproduct in a pharmaceutical environment? If that is automated, we're also going to increase our workplace satisfaction. When we start thinking about, we mentioned Calm and a lot of the other apps that are coming out, but there's this advent of citizen developers. There are a lot of apps that we can download on our smartphones. As the citizen developers come out and they're creating those apps, they are not using a common data model. So how do we use that data and bring it together to where it's meaningful and it's a standardized set so a provider has access to it? And then lastly, we talked about the FDA clearing a lot of those algorithms, but think about AI and bias. Humans are fallible. We wrote a lot of that AI. How do we remove our own bias from that to increase healthcare satisfaction, to increase healthcare outcomes? With that, this is where Erin's going to talk to us about machine learning interoperability. I think we have a poll question, and one of the poll questions is, when we look at healthcare and life sciences, you have a ton of disparate systems. So how many are you using in your organization? And we'll just give everybody a second to enter that in. I don't know if everybody had a chance, but I'm going to turn this over to Erin.
Thanks, Jennifer. So as Jennifer touched on a bunch of different points, and I will dive into a little bit deeper, is that all of this healthcare that has been around for centuries is now becoming digitized, right? And with the digitization of information that's coming from clinical trials and healthcare systems and life science organizations that are producing a lot of different information, there's a need for them to be able to share information in a consistent and meaningful way. And so that doesn't just include with organizations that are public sectors and IoT devices, but that even is with the federal government. The FDA needs to receive information around clinical data and tracking and being able to receive that. It has to be ISO compliant. It needs to come from environments that are SOX compliant as well, so that way that they know that it hasn't been, tampered with. We have, organizations within healthcare that historically have been using things such as HL7 or Health Level 7 to do interoperability for payments and labs and things of that nature, so that way that organizations can get a better view of what is going around about a patient, right? Because we've all been there where we go to our doctor and we have to go to the next doctor, and so we have to ask them to fax the information to the next doctor, right? And they receive it via fax and put that into a file themselves. Highly inefficient. And so that's where the interoperability has come in. So what direction is that going, right? And it's really in the API space. You've seen an explosion of APIs over the past decade, originally starting with a system where we have a SOA or SOAP-based interface that is legacy approach, and other organizations are using HL7. And so what's happened is there was a consortium created called the FHIR right? And it's designed to produce the next generation of healthcare information. And what that's done is that's generating over $300 billion worth of revenue for organizations that are building APIs to consume and participate in the healthcare market. But why is that, right? And where is it? Well, it starts, a lot with the electronic health records and being able to share that information across, doing everything from, patient participation, insurance plan, confirmation, making sure that the doctors and facilities are getting paid. In addition to that, there has been a move over the past decade to cloud-based applications, right? We've all heard of systems like Salesforce and, Workday and things of that nature, right? Well, Salesforce has a health cloud, right? And health cloud is a very popular cloud where organizations are able to collaborate information. But how do they do that, right? It's through APIs. And all of this information is coming from organizations, so that way that the end patient, which is you, has the ability to have better care service at the point of service, right? One of the solutions that we deployed for one of our customers was in support of 300 clinics for a healthcare system. And what they are running into is that the clinics were close enough that by the time the information was moving through their legacy systems between the clinics, a patient could go from one clinic to the next clinic and get two separate prescriptions written for maybe opioids or benzos or other drugs that are highly addictive. And so this became an abusive type of approach that people were able to do. Now with APIs, this becomes more real-time information sharing across the set of clinics, so that way they could deny those patients a service at the point of service rather than having to allow this to broker all the way down into the pharmaceutical realm where it may or may not get caught at that point as well, right? So what does APIs bring and why is the value there? Well, as we are aggregating all of this data, what we're doing is we're getting a lot of algorithms and machine learning that's being applied against this data, right? As you can see, the FDA has cleared, 520 different AI medical algorithms. A lot of these are in radiology, right? Understanding, maybe, is it what type of break is it? Is it a compound fracture or whatnot through a simple image, or it could be taking a picture of, a skin tag or a mole and understanding, is there risk associated with melanoma or other cancerous diseases that could impact a person? And this is fantastic because these cleared algorithms are now digitized and can be applied to today's market of IoT devices. And so that then allows us to move into what we see as being the next generation of life science and healthcare really merging together. Imagine being able to skip, the long wait at the dermatologist, and you can use your iPhone and be able to take a picture of a mole and allow it to process to say, yay or nay, you need to go in to see a doctor, right? This is something that could very well be, in the future. We have so many different applications that are collecting the data about you today that can really help benefit you as a person, as a patient, to improve the longevity of your lifespan. You have things such as the Oura Ring that is tracking blood pressure and pulse and things of that nature. We have sleep monitoring that is done through a proliferation of different, systems, right? I actually have an app on my phone where it listens to my breathing at night to tell me if I'm in a REM sleep or if I'm in, a lighter sleep or if I'm awake, and it really tells me what I need to do. So these things help to improve our health. You can even do an EKG now on your own phone. You have a little adapter where you hold two fingers. We've all seen the commercials. And last but not least, but there's even a forensic toilet now, where every time that you go to the bathroom, it's scanning and analyzing your urine to identify if you have problems or issues within your excrements that need to be discussed about with a doctor. Now, if we start to take all of this information, organizations are really blowing up and pulling this data together to give you a better look at what you are doing, to tell you, do you need more vitamins? Do you need more calcium? Do you need to eat more meat or less meat? Do you need to move more towards a vegetarian diet? And really being able to choreograph health for you instead of it just being a generic stamp of everything that everybody else has to do, right? Because we as people are unique, right? Just like our fingerprints. And so our bodies and our needs are unique. So, AI in healthcare is really allowing organizations and products to get to a point where we're able to take care of the us that we are and not the us that everybody else is. And so that's really exciting from a technology perspective. So there are 3 challenges with unification of this data, right? And we discussed some of this around interoperability, understanding how the data is coming in and really unifying the format of the data, how the data comes across and how it gets consumed, right? Making sure that we have people's names as first name and F name and first underscore name and all these different ways that people like to say that this is a first name, really standardizing this so that way that systems can easily consume that information. Bringing in real world data. There's a ton of data that's being collected today, right? More data that you can even imagine, right? Based on analysis, something like 85% of all data that is collected today was generated in the past 2 years, right? That's a lot of data in 2 years versus what has been historically in a technology universe, which goes back 20 years, right? So, and that's going to continue to accelerate as we move forward. And so using that data to really train these models. As Jennifer mentioned before, how do we take the human bias out of AI models so that way that they can be applied using just facts and not any opinions, right? And then last but not least, attracting the right talent into the space, making sure the best and brightest minds that have really good opinions associated with how medical can be done, what could be beneficial for an organization or a person is really brought into the space and really help to grow and mature this area in life science and healthcare. And with that, I'm going to move on to the next poll question, and I'll turn it back over to Jennifer.
So great. I think if you reflect back to the first slide that Aaron showed is that there are a lot of disparate systems inside of healthcare, and there's a lot of disparate systems inside of life sciences. And as the 2 industries are slowly coming together, is what organizations do you have in place? And when we start thinking about data, what is the right home for all of that data? And as you're moving into different markets, how do you know you're selecting the right solutions? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dale, and he's going to walk through a process methodology that talks about the whole concept of merging industries, moving into new places your business has never been before, and how do you really look at it to make sure that it's the right solution, storing the right data. Dale?
Thanks, Jen. One of the things that we use is something called a business transformation network to help understand what the right way to be thinking about a business is and how do we decompose it so that we can identify the appropriate data and identify the appropriate systems that need to act or transact with that data. There's 5 major components that we think about. And within any organization, there's a different level of focus that is necessary in each of them. But we generally start with the concept of strategy and structure. Within your organization, what is the strategy and how do you want to serve your customer base? What's the structure you have in place to be able to enable that? How do your products and services flow through your supply chain or value chain from your vendor, manufacturer, through distribution, and finally to end user or the definition of customer here? Second piece of the puzzle we think about is what are the business processes that we need to be considered. So we use a concept called the process framework that allows us to be able to decompose an organization and be able to think about all of the things that we're trying to accomplish within the context of this initiative or endeavor. Third piece of the puzzle we look at and think decompose is within the context of the organization, who is participating, not just what they're doing and why they're doing, but who needs to be involved, who needs access to the data, to the information, will be supplying information into the model, who will be consuming information coming out of the model. Fourth piece of the puzzle is then the decisioning that needs to occur. We call that governance or decision rights. And the context there is, all right, I may have information, but do I actually have, in the context of making decisions, do I have it all? Am I the one that was going to be making the decision? And the last piece of the puzzle that we think about is the technology and the data necessary to drive the overall structure and architecture. So we generally use these 5 lenses to help decompose the business or the business problem we're working to solve. This gives us the granular information of understanding what's necessary, how we want to then build the pieces of the puzzle back up together so that we can service the strategic initiative or objective of what we're trying to solve, what we're trying to address. I'm going to suggest we move to the next slide, and we may, or Blair, Mr. Mums, is there anything you would want to kind of add before we kind of get to the thought process of how we approach this?
No, I think we're good jumping right in and talking about the approach.
So thanks, Dale. This is Blair Bass, talking a little bit about the approach. So we basically have a 12-step approach into understanding the business requirements and being able to understand what the right technology solutions are for any given business. The first step involves performing a business requirements assessment, understanding really what is the value chain of the business and what the end goals are. And then what are all the steps that need to take place to understand what type of technology, what technology solutions, and what technology stacks may offer those solutions. For instance, working with some medical clients, we've had the clients where they've automated the entire claim intake process so they can receive electronic claims right from the medical provider via EDI or APIs, which cut down time of manual entry. But one thing that was not uncovered is, but they couldn't accept images or medical records through that automation. So we got the claims, but the images and the medical records still had to be mailed in manually and then somehow matched up later. So understanding the full set of business requirements of what's trying to be accomplished and making sure that we cover all those aspects so that technology can provide the solution. Then evaluating the current state and what current limitations are. For instance, in my healthcare experience, I manage multiple departments, including dental, vision, behavioral health, medical claims, all of those things, right? But it was interesting that even in today's highly technology world, all of those were handled separately. So dental and vision did not share medical information about the patient with the medical side. And so all that information is valuable. Understanding that HIPAA applies, PHI applies, but how do we get this so the records and all the data move with the patient and not stick with just who the provider is itself? So being able to evaluate the current state, current limitations, and then understanding what those requirements may be for technology solutions and how we automate all of this data together. And then obviously defining the critical future state and being able to understand both how to reduce cost, operational internal costs, as well as better outcomes for the patient themselves. And tying all that together in a full assessment approach and being able to come up with needed technology. Some of these may be new, some of these may be existing. And then Matt, I'll let you talk a little bit about how we pull all that together to evaluate and present the findings of those assessment approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Blair. So, once we've defined the future state of the organization, and again, tying that back to the company's overall strategy, which is important as you go into software selection, we help our customers put together RFP packages that'll include these end-to-end process flows of the future defined state. It'll include a demo script, which are basically the software company going through their system and showing you the business processes, how they'd work in that future state, and the data packet was sample data. So you're seeing data reflected in the system that's meaningful to you. So once we provide that out, and we'll have usually down selected throughout our assessment process to 2, 3, maybe 4 core solutions. Maybe there's a couple additional systems that have to come into your digital foundation, the quality management system, an MES system, all of that would tie back to a core digital foundation. We'd go out to them. We give them a little bit of time to do some Q&A back with our customer, make sure they fully understand the requirements. They can put together as good a demo as possible, invite them on site with our customer. Our customers will have a team that they've put together, usually a functional expert or two per area in the business. And the software companies then start to demo to the script we provided. So you're comparing apples to apples across the software solutions. We provide a weighted scoring card that's objective. So everybody on our customer's team and ourselves as part of that team will be scoring that software, determining whether it meets all the requirements, notating any gaps. During that process, we also look at some, more intangible pieces of the software that you're going to select. Things like what their post-implementation support looks like. How stable are they as a company? Are they owned by a private equity firm that is not investing in the R&D to keep that software on the cutting edge technology? How well is the interoperability, as Aaron addressed earlier? How easy is the API architecture to integrate with other systems and other data sources we need it to? So those are all going to be things we objectively score during that process. Once we get done with that, we'll have come out with a winner. Maybe you get down to two and you look at some cost trade-offs or some of the other benefits. You select your software, and then based on that, the final step for us is putting together the deliverables coming out of this assessment, which will be the business objectives that the software is going to meet. Again, tying that all the way back to your strategy of the company. It's going to have your master project schedule. It's going to define total costs of not just implementation, but of ownership post-implementation. We're going to map out your return on investment that you should see out of the investment in this technology. And then all of that's presented to the executive committee, steering committee, C-suite, whoever is making the ultimate decision within your organization. And I think from there, Jen, we will let you wrap it up, I believe.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. If you're interested in learning more, please contact us at info@argano.com. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you have or put you in touch with any of our subject matter experts to either help you look at a solution. If you're somewhere in your implementation or having an issue with your data, we can help you with those as well. With that, I'm going to ask Matt, are there any questions that we got from the audience?
Yes. Jen, let's give the audience 30, 45 seconds to put in some questions. We have a few, but maybe some more will trickle in. Let's pause for a little bit, and then I'll check back with you soon.
Perfect.
All right, we did get a few questions in. The first one I think would be for Matt and or Blair. So this question is, once software is selected, and Argano gives the client their recommendation, what does Argano's involvement look like after the fact? And what are next steps?
So I'll take that first one, Blair. So I think that's a great question. Argano, as a technology agnostic consulting firm, has teams and capabilities around all of the tier one core digital foundation softwares. We've got expertise and teams around most of the other tangential pieces of your system, whether that's the MES system or maybe it's quality management system. So we're gonna really shepherd this project through from start to finish. We take our assessments, and once our customers make the decision, we stay right there in lockstep with them. as long as they want us to stay there with them, and they almost always do. In implementing that technology, that's the next step. We're going to take the master schedule that was built coming out of the assessment, and we're going to move into the implementation of that software.
And Matt, if I may, the only thing I would add to that, which I agree with, is part of the original assessment, the evaluation is working on the value chain, the value proposition for the business, looking at the ROI. So sticking around with the implementation, we're also there to measure the outcomes and the benefits, and to ensure that the customer receives what the original value proposition was, because a lot of people implement and go, hey, what happened? Where's the bang? And Argano's goal is to make sure you receive all the value from the original assessment.
Yeah, and that's right, because it's not just about the technology, Blair. It's about the organizational change. Maybe there's organizational restructuring. It's about the change management. So it's about the education and the training of all the personnel that are going to make the system work ultimately. And again, hopefully throughout the assessment, we've started that education. We've really brought in team members from throughout the organization, so they're bought in and they're part of selecting the solution. So that's right. It's about getting the overall return on investment of the technology.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And we do have another question. I think this would be best answered by Aaron, but I'll let all the presenters decide. So here's the question. How do you deal with data bias during feature mapping and modeling of solutions?
That's a good question. So, yeah, so data bias is something that is a real problem, right? Something that organizations need to understand, where the value of what their data is, and understanding how to really leverage that data for business case solutions, right? And so in today's world, what happens is we have a lot of influence from system owners around, various data pieces. And they also have, business owners who feel that other pieces of data are more valuable. So understanding how to get real value out of it. And that's part of what I was talking about before, getting the right resources into the organization to help promote growth and development of new ideas and new ideologies, are ways that you really kind of combat that, so that way that you have really holistic and a true data model.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Another question we have, this one for Dale. What are the factors that determine timeline to develop a transformation roadmap?
Great question. Generally speaking, we think about this in the context of scope, and there's lots of different components of scope. Scope is the business processes we're evaluating. Scope is the number of divisions, business units within the organization that's going to be considered. Scope is considers whether you're inside of an environment, or whether or not you need to stretch across several environments. And what we basically do is we think through the dimensions of scope, and can quickly t-shirt size the program and the initiative to figure out how long it takes. And if I think about it in the context of t-shirting, a quick assessment or initiative to figure out what might be a path forward could be as short as 3 or 4 weeks. And for a more comprehensive assessment, where you might be standing up a new facility, the example Jen was using is we're going to stand up a dark factory. That may be more in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 months.
Got it. Thanks, Dale. And then Jen, I do have a question for you. So how can technology help my company manage the ever-changing regulatory framework?
That's an interesting one, because I'm just going to use life sciences as my example for it. But what we saw is the move from computer system validation to computer system assurance, was if we're only validating the things that pertain to my organization. So we say that the best of breed solution I deployed has been deployed at 1,000 other places. I'm not going to validate that it does its intended use, but I'm going to validate the portions that I use that I've personalized for myself. What we saw is this, that they were adopting it. They were adopting technology, something like DevOps as an example, to manage those test scripts, to manage its feature functionality set. And what was happening is they were getting software releases as we've moved more and more to SaaS cloud-based solutions, is that we could bump it up against DevOps and see if something had materially changed and if we had to test it again. So we're seeing more and more of these QA automation tools come out to help with the regulatory compliance, to get you faster time to market. And that's even true from, not just from the FDA. When I think about it from decentralized testing, can you run those same types of automated test scripts against it to get your life-saving technology out? I mean, that's really what's coming down, faster time to market.
Great, thanks, Jen. And then I think we do have time for one last question, and I'll throw this one out to the entire group. So is there, earlier in the presentation, we had talked about, there was a slide about, best-in-class technology architecture for healthcare and life sciences organizations. So the question is there a specific set of technologies that are currently considered best-in-class for these types of organizations?
I'll take that one, Matt. What we've seen over the last few years is historically there was considered what's best in class. You're going to go buy one publisher and paint the wall that color, and it didn't matter if it was your EMR, your EHR, your life sciences, your MES, your ERP system. What we're seeing now is this whole concept of composable solutions, or we can call them best of breed solutions, where you're bringing together multiple solutions that are fitting your purpose. And those solutions are what's considered best in class for you. It's no longer that you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant and say, I have to be on this EMR, I have to be on this MES, and I have to go with the whole publisher. It is, what are those best composable solutions that bring the best experience to your employees, to your vendors, to your customers, to your providers? And that is the biggest trend. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that.
Yeah, Jen, let me just piggyback on that. This is one of the reasons why this conversation, I think, is interesting and poignant now, is that software selection or any time technology selection has become a little bit more difficult. You can't turn to a Gartner and pick pick what everybody else has picked. Or you can, but you're going to overpay, and you're going to likely end up with something that doesn't uniquely fit your needs. The whole idea of being able to put microarchitectures in place that support what creates the differentiation in your organization, and it helps you create a competitive advantage is one strategy. And then for the areas where it is not nearly as important, then you can select something that is a typical off-the-shelf solution that everybody else uses as well. So there's a great value in understanding how you intend to drive your competitive advantage and tie your technology selection to that strategy.
And Dale, this is Blair, if I may. That's a great answer, both you and Jen. I'd add just one other thing. A lot of companies we find and customers are looking for best in class for many various reasons. Some companies, just from a shareholder standpoint, that they want to report out that they're using SAP or best in class thing because it looks good. But although there are best in class solutions, everything should be tied back to your business assessment that we talked about, the assessment approach, which is what are your business requirements? What are your needs? And what does your future state look like? Because the system can be best in class, and that's great. But if it doesn't solve your business needs, then it's not best in class to you. And so we're looking, like everybody's mentioned, what are the right solutions? How do we build those together, integrate those together to make sure that we accomplish the overall business goals?
Great, thanks, Blair, and thanks everyone for your answers. That's some great info. All right, so we're going to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for attending. And just to echo what Jen had said a little earlier, if you have questions or would like to, speak with anybody on the call further, please either reach out to us at the email address on your screen, info@argano.com, or feel free to message any of the presenters on LinkedIn. You can find their contact information in the slide deck, which a PDF is available in the resources section of the webinar console. Thanks, and have a great day.